This podcast is sponsored by Live.Word of Freeman J. Burns Realty. Are you looking to buy or sell a home or investment property in Charlotte, North Carolina, or any of the surrounding cities? If so, contact me. You can reach me by email at nitra@freemanjburns.com. That's Nitra, Nitra, at Freeman, the letter J, Burns.com. At Burns Realty, we are passionate about providing a world-class experience and building relationships that will last long after your real estate transaction.
I love him for the man he wants to be, and I love him for the man that he almost is. I love him.
Welcome to the fourth episode of
Live.Laugh.Word.
I am Chris Word.
And I'm Nitra.Word.
And as always, we have a very exciting show for you today.
Honey, you don't sound that excited.
I don't?
No.
Okay, let me try it again.
Okay.
We have a very exciting show for you today.
There we go.
That's
that
better?
Sounds better, yes.
Okay, you keep trying to change me, woman.
Well, that gets into the topic of today's discussion.
Okay.
Is change possible? And is it fair to expect or believe others can change?
Wow, that's a deep topic.
I got a good topic this week.
You do.
Okay, thank you. Thumbs up.
Okay, where do we start?
Well, I think we should start with the world-class debate of nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I think those are.
Okay.
Okay, so nature versus nurture. I would, to make it simple, really say that nurture is how you were raised, the things that you learned as you were growing up as a child.
Right.
And nature are things that are innate within you
that
and
you
were
just born with.
Right.
Yes.
What's something that you learned?
One thing that I struggle with constantly, and I was just talking to my family this morning about it, is I deal with the ability or the non-ability to answer texts or calls on time.
Okay, how was that?
Well, I just don't have that kind of fire. If someone texts or calls me, it's not an immediate notion to say, oh, let me call them back immediately. And I'm just not a phone person.
Okay.
And I know that comes from being raised. My mother never grew up being a sociable phone person, talking to friends. You know how some mothers talk on the phone all day, 24/7 a day? That was just not my mother.
Okay.
But, always when we saw people and we saw them in person, it was definitely that reaction, but not so much that constant over the phone communication.
I understand. And I would say the contrary for me. My mother was in politics as I was growing up. Shout out to the first African American woman elected board of review in St. Clair County, Illinois. Shout out, moms. But for her, seeing her in that role, going to give speeches, shaking hands, kissing babies, meeting people, talking on the phone, I learned that to be personable.
Yeah.
Through that and from her. And I believe I'm a little bit of the opposite, where I want to reach out to people. I want to see phone calls or text messages or get that type of interaction.
Right. And some people would say that that's more so of a nature trait. Some people would say, well, your mom is just an extrovert. Right. And you're an extrovert as well.
Right.
And so we were having this debate of, is that truly the case? Or is that more so a learned capability? It can be learned by anyone if they put their minds and actions to it.
Yes, and just based on your environment.
Right.
Is that something that you learn? Because you can say some children growing up, they don't learn how to study when it comes to education or going through while they're going through school, where some study every day or focus.
And then they may just get the title of, oh, you're smart.
Exactly.
And, the other child that does not know how to study just mean, oh, he's an average student.
Right. When it has nothing to do with that person's ability. It's just their environment isn't conducive for them to learn or quote unquote become smart.
Right.
So, and that comes with family and friends and communication and all the different things about life and what you learn and who you are as you become an adult.
Right.
Yes.
So that kind of leads us into the meat of this conversation, which is when it comes to relationships. Okay. And you have these expectations versus the reality of the situation, what it really is. How do you approach that to make sure that you're not unequally yoked with someone?
And I think that's a very deep topic.
Yes.
Because even before we started dating, I've taken a lot of personality tests, the Myers-Briggs, the Sally Hogshead has a test out there with 49 different archetypes to try to identify who I am as a person. And at one point in my life, it said that I was an introvert. And now at this stage in my life, I feel like I'm an extrovert.
Right.
But does that mean I changed as a person? Does that mean it was wrong? Or does that mean that throughout my life, I became a different person based on things? So
I think it's a little of both. I believe that, we're never the same person at every point in our lives. The whole purpose of this world and everything that we see grows, evolves, and changes. Just like we have seasons in the physical world, we have seasons in growth within ourselves.
Okay.
So it's unfair to think that the test was wrong, and maybe at that time in your life that test was where you were.
Okay.
I think it's unfair for people to claim one thing and say, this is who I am, this is always who I will be, and I will not change.
Right.
I think change is always prevalent, and it will always happen in everyone, as long as you're open to it.
And that's a little naive as well to say that because I was a introvert in high school, I'm gonna always be an introvert for the rest of my life,
Right.
and I'm not that person to want to go out, not that person to want to meet new people. I just want to stay in the house and not do much.
Right.
I think that's a little naive, and it puts me in a box if I were to believe that. So
Right.
then when it comes to meeting or dating, who am I looking for as a mate? Am I looking for another introvert so that we both can sit in our house and not do much and not kind of go out, but just keep to ourselves, be in our own bubble? Or are we looking for extra, or am I looking for an extrovert, someone that wants to meet new people, want to be out in the scene, want to go to these networking events or happy hours, and just kind of want to be entertained
Right.
by external stimulation?
I feel like you addressed 2 points there. One,
Okay.
about relationships, and two, just about, is it okay to change?
Okay.
On the is it okay to change, I think that if you were to believe, like you said, I'm an introvert when it came to dating in life, you put yourself in a box and you probably would not have stepped out to accomplish all the things you wanted to if you would have believed those tests.
Yes.
And I think that's something people need to know, that just because the test tells you something doesn't mean that's what it is. It doesn't limit you. It doesn't mean that that's all you'll be. I think it gets back to our first podcast where we say, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Doing those things, setting those goals are helping you to grow and change as a person.
Right.
For all those commitments. And that's the one thing I want everyone to take away from this, is that, yes, it's possible to change. It's a private journey.
Okay.
And you have to commit to it.
Yes.
And say, I no longer want to be an introvert. I may no longer want to be a procrastinator.
Okay.
I may not want to be this weight. Whatever it is, there are so many things that we struggle with on a daily basis for goals. It's okay to set out and say, I no longer want to be this. There's no test or person or anyone who can tell me I have to be a certain way.
Yes.
And to step out and do it. That was the first point.
Yes, and I would say I agree with all of that. I think it's very hard to decide to make a change, and it's very hard to see yourself through that entire change.
Right.
And there are a lot of things that people challenge themselves with on a daily basis to change. We just came into a new year. There were a lot of New Year's resolutions that people said that they were going after. And right now it's January 22nd. How are you doing on those resolutions? Some people may have fell off. Some people are still pushing through. But in a relationship, and I'll switch now to the relationship, is it fair for my partner to hold me accountable to that change? If when we met, I was an introvert, and now my resolution or goal is to be an extrovert this year. I want to go out. I want to see people.
Right.
I want to do things. Is it fair for you to hold me accountable to that?
And that's a question a lot of people probably come with in their relationships, or arguments that get started, and saying, when I met you, you were not X.
Right.
But you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z to get there. And so many times people run with that or hold people accountable for that.
Right.
And soon get down the road and realize, man, that person never changed. And I want people to realize there's several reasons why those things don't change. One, it's a personal journey. It's kind of not fair to tell someone, I'm going to do something, because then that person does hold the other person accountable. But sometimes that person isn't committed to self.
Right.
If you're not committed to self, how can you be committed to change for that other person?
Okay, so you're saying what was your motivation to change? Are you changing because
Correct.
you want to change?
Or you changing to please
Or
someone
you
else?
change to please someone else?
Yes, I think that's a discussion that a lot of people need to have within themselves before they make promises. And another thing that my brother always told me is that when someone shows you who they are or they tell you who they are, believe them.
Right.
And leave it there.
Right.
Don't try to change them. Don't try to sway them. If this person says this is the way I am, don't sit here and say, well, he could be this, he could be that, because then you go down a very slippery slope.
Right, it's a dangerous path.
That may never lead to anything.
Right, that means you're in this relationship hoping that what you always wanted will come true. And if it doesn't come true, then you're carrying either resentment, disappointment, frustration throughout the entirety of that relationship.
Right.
And that's really only a burden that you're carrying yourself, because the person that you're hoping will change is not changing, and they don't feel that or may not feel that same frustration or disappointment.
Right.
Unless you're giving it to them verbally and arguments and stuff. But you're carrying that if you're in a relationship hoping for change.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And a few of the things that we have here, like, let's say, for instance, this is a very sensitive topic, but we'll go with weight loss.
Okay.
Some people start relationships at a certain weight. We all do.
Yeah.
At that point in time, we were this figure, this weight, and that's what we thought we were always going to be. Mm-hmm. And then life happens.
And love happens.
And love happens. And dinner happens.
Yes.
And dinner's
movies with Haagen-Dazs happen.
Exactly. And then now you have movie theaters that bring the food to you.
Right.
But life happens, and then that weight is no longer the reality. And for self, you could be disappointed or frustrated because you're trying to get down to that expected figure. And then you could even hold your partner accountable, saying that this isn't where you were when we met.
Right.
Or you can even put your own disappointments on your partner to say, I know you don't like me because I'm this weight.
And start to feel self-conscious about it.
Yes, and that may not be the truth. That partner may not even be thinking about your weight, but you could be putting that on them, and now you're self-conscious, and it changes the dynamics of the relationship in some regard.
Right.
And so that's one of the many examples that people go through when it comes to change and self-change. Or am I committed to my personal goal to the point that I'm not even looking at my mate to hold me accountable? It's something that I want to do. I get up at 5:30 in the morning to go to the gym because that's what I want to do.
Right.
Or do you, well, she ain't asked me about it today, then I'm not going to answer the question, and then I don't have to worry about it. So
I just want to have a discussion to say that these are all good topics, and people should discuss these things. And instead of saying, oh, we're together and especially before marriage. I've seen so many times where people say, oh, but when we get married, he's going to, I don't know, find a job. He's going to do this. We're going to have this. And
he's not going to cheat on me.
He's not going to cheat on me. We're going to be committed to each other. And that's great. But that person has to be committed to self. And there's another thing I wanted to get to the point of having standards. At some point, you have to say, do I want to accept that person as they are now? Mm-hmm. Not trying to change them and go forward, knowing that if they never change, even though they said they were, if they never change, I'm okay with that.
Right.
Or do I have a standard to say, no, I need this change to happen before we go down that aisle, literally.
And accepting whether or not that is the person for you. And also being aware that, are you choosing to forego some of your standards for something like comfort or attention or just someone? Because that can also lead to a very difficult and dangerous road for your relationship and your self-happiness.
Yes. And then also getting clear on what that change looks like. If someone made a promise to you to say, when we get married, I'm going to be more of a saver. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to spend this frivolously as I did before.
Right.
What does that look like? What is the attainment or measurement to say, I need you to save X amount of dollars per month to show me that you're committed not only to yourself, but you're also committed to me.
Right.
So that I can believe in you.
And you're saying before they get married or just
before they get married, to show that you
She's
have some skin on the game and you're working toward that.
Yep. And overall, I mean, the hard part about it is that life happens, and what you expect life to be and what your goals are, things will change over time, and your missions and your plans will change over time. And really, the important part about being in a relationship, no matter who it is to keep it fluid. I mean, things will change and you will change, but is your love, or will your love for that person change? Or is that only contingent on the fact that you said you were going to be a saver, you're no longer a saver, or you were this way when we got together, you stopped being that way. Now it's all up in smoke.
You have to realize that change is inevitable.
Yes.
And I think the hardest part with the, we all hear in the Bible being unequally yoked. I want people to know that it's not just about if that person is a Christian and you're a Muslim. It comes on so many different levels. It's kind of like being on the even playing field. And over time, those playing fields may change.
Right.
It's just the question of when we grow. Are we going to grow together or are we going to grow apart?
Right. And I think we've mentioned a few things. I'm just going to go back over a few takeaways that we have down here. And the first one would be, it is possible for change, and it is a private journey. So not to expect someone to always be who they were when you first got together in the different ways that we mentioned, but to also allow that person to change as they experience life individually and collectively.
And also realizing, for, as you said, having the what am I trying to say?
I don't know.
Okay. But anyway, I got a little tongue twisted. Giving that person the leeway, there it is,
yes,
for that change. That change may not always be positive. I want to illustrate that when you're in a relationship and people change for the good and people change for the bad.
Wow.
And you have to be willing to be flexible in that.
Okay.
And deal with that as a couple and address those situations.
Now let's talk about the unequally yoked.
Yes.
Is it possible, because we've all heard of the cliche that opposites attract, and we always find it quote unquote cute when you see someone completely opposite. You see a really tall guy and a shorter woman, or you just see the different opposites of the spectrum. In other ways, spending, in someone being a procrastinator versus someone being an initiator, and an introvert versus an extrovert, someone being more, they love to communicate versus others love to keep their emotions in. On the very extreme ends of the spectrum, is it possible for that relationship or that dynamic to survive?
Right. I think it's important to realize that there's balance in everything.
Okay.
I do believe the cliche does make sense in opposites attract. But I know, just speaking from our relationship, that there are so many ways we're similar that helps as well.
Yes.
Because we operate on that same wavelength, on that same frequency. It makes things in our relationship much smoother because we have the overall general idea. We're not totally on the opposite end of the spectrum. Right. It's kind of like, we're both in the middle on different sides.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
So we're not the extreme.
We're not polar opposites.
We're not polar opposites. We just, because of our nurture, or in some few ways our nature, we favor certain areas.
So in certain areas, extremes. I would say you are more extroverted and I'm more introverted.
Yes.
I am more of a procrastinator when it comes to things. You're more of an initiator. But there's never a time where I'm not doing what I need to do. Okay. There's never a time I'm letting the deadline go.
Okay.
So in that aspect, I think it'd be different if you have a person that was always on time, on point, and a person who never shows up, never can hold out their end of the bargain. That's something totally different than saying, I'll make it there.
Right.
I'll be on time.
Right.
But I may be cutting it real close.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you get that guy, and I'm seeing it in my head, who he's already dressed, ready to go. The movie starts at 8. He's ready at 7:15, 7:30. And his lady or his mate just got out of bed, like, okay, what time? Because I'm planning on leaving 5 minutes before that time, no matter where the destination is. And it turns into frustration, which turns into an argument, which turns into no one going anywhere. And now we just ruined our evening.
Right.
So I think suggestion or the takeaway here is to be patient with yourself and with others as they go, as you yourself and as others go through that change.
Yes.
Whatever it is, it could be something small, but we're working toward it.
Yeah, and work toward it together. And that leads to another takeaway of accepting others for who they are.
Right.
If you know it takes her an hour to get ready, let's help initiate that process by saying, okay, the movie starts at 8:15. It's now 7 o'clock. I need you to get ready right now.
Exactly.
There's no more time to lay in bed.
Exactly.
You know? So I know for you, I'm usually that 15 minutes behind. I'm not a whole hour behind. But you've even changed some of the clocks in our house. I'm like, is that clock right? I'm not sure. Then I think I'm running late, and then we get to the car. It's like, oh man, okay, so, I'm on time.
Shout out to everybody who set their clocks ahead back 15 minutes just to make sure that we get to places on time.
Oh, but my gosh.
I do that, one, because if you're unsure of the time, you're kind of going to move a little faster.
Yes.
But two, because I do want us as a team and me myself to work to be more prompt.
Correct.
And a way of doing that is not, I think when I was growing up, so nurture is whatever time it said that we're going to start. We'll say the movie starts at 8:15. We're going to leave the house at 8 o'clock or between 8 o'clock and 8:15, thinking it's only 10 minutes up the road or it's only around the corner.
When it's actually 20 minutes up the road.
When it's actually 20 minutes up the road, but you still have to get tickets. You still have to park the car and walk there and get situated, and then the movie starts. So instead of feeling like you're always rushing somewhere, to be that person who is either early,
right,
or that person who is on time, being 5 minutes before, so arriving at 8:10 and being in your seat at 8:10, so that when it starts, you feel like you're getting the full experience.
You even get to see the previews.
Right, and you didn't know movies were coming out. But you get to see the previews, and now you can be like, man, I want to plan to see that or not.
You know, most people wait, like, I got at least 10 minutes because there's 10 minutes of previews. So they always factor that into the time.
Exactly. And I'll even say this, and this is a suggestion for anyone. You would be amazed at what happens if you get to places early. Here's an example. You're going to a networking event that starts at 6 o'clock. You would normally say, people don't normally arrive to the event maybe 6:30, so I'll plan to get there around 6:45, as if you are so much special, so much more special than everyone there that you deserve another 15 minutes to arrive later. However, if you arrive at 6 o'clock, you get to meet, shake hands, greet the organizers of the event. You get to meet the president of the organization or who's ever there waiting on the other people to show up. And now you have that exclusive one-on-one time with people that you may not normally have met if you got there at that 6:45.
Right.
It happens more often than you think, but you put yourself in a position to be great just by being on time, because there's so many other people being late. That was a small tangent.
I was going to say, that sounds like a big tangent.
That was a big tangent. But I just felt that when we were talking about being prompt, I have met a lot of people and have had a lot of great conversations just because I've gotten to places early or on time, or I was able to help out.
Right.
And they looked at me like, wow, Chris is such a great guy because he picked up those chairs and moved them to the other side of the room. But I was only doing that because I was bored. But now they look at me in high regard.
Right.
But be on time. Shout out to on time. Okay. So we've said a lot on this podcast.
We have.
What do we want to wrap up? What's our major takeaway?
Our major takeaway is the great thing about this world is you can be whoever you want to be. No matter what the personality tests say about you, no matter how you grew up or what you were nurtured to believe and what ideals you may have been raised with, if at any point in time you want to change that and become something else, you can.
Yes, I agree with that.
You just have to remember that there are, and here are the takeaways with that. That one, you have to be committed to the process and commit to yourself and saying, this is something I want to do.
Right.
And two, saying to yourself, yes, it is possible. And it's a private journey. We all have our individual lives to live. We don't have to answer to anyone but God. So however you want to live your life, it's how you live it.
Right.
And most of all, while you're going through the process, be patient with yourself, knowing that it's not going to be an easy road, but if you want to be the initiator versus the procrastinator, or the extrovert versus the introvert, it's all in the power of your hands.
Right. Your time and your commitment, whatever you focus on is what you will become.
Exactly.
And once you make that decision, as she said, allow yourself the ability to grow and to change, and be patient with yourself, your successes and your failures. But understand, the more you're committed to it, the more steps you take, the sooner and closer you will be to your goal.
And if you're not the person making the change, but someone has declared that they're making a change for you,
to you,
or to you, also know that it's not our job to hold that person accountable. Right. Realizing those same principles that we stated for ourselves, that it's a very private journey, and you have to be committed to yourself. We have to give those people the freedom and space for those same aspects as well.
Yes. And someone may say it, oh, I want you to hold me accountable, or they may come to you for that help, or that validation in the change that they're trying to do, or that they want to do. And it's perfectly fine to say, okay, I hear you, I wish you the best of luck, or I think you can do it, and leave it at that.
Right.
Leave it at that.
And also taking away the fact that when someone shows you who they are, even if they say something different, when their actions show you who they are, please believe them.
Yes.
And take it at face value.
Yes.
And be okay with that, and accept them for who they are.
Right.
Knowing that, as I said before, we don't have the power to change or control anyone.
Right.
But ourselves.
But ourselves. That is it. And with that, I think we have reached the end of our 4th episode.
Yes, we have. And I just want to say thank you all so much for listening to us every week. We appreciate your comments and your feedback. And also, if you could please email it to us at Live.Laugh.Word at gmail.com. We would love to hear what you think, things we can improve on, more topics we can talk about.
Yes.
And even if you just want to say, hey, we would love to hear from you.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes. And you can always, as always, follow us on Instagram at Live.Laugh.Word. Please feel free to join us as subscribers. We love seeing your comments and the likes that we see on there as well.
Right.
I am Chris.
I'm Nitra.
And we're signing out for number 4.
See you next week.
See you then.